Well, I got interested in the problems of our democracy because when I was 19 years old I saw The Clash, and they were a band that strove to make comments on the politics of the day, and I kind of got my lead from those and from the ideals of punk, which more or less said that, you know, your contribution was as valid as everybody else's, so why don't you step up and have something to say. During the 1980s, I was involved with Wedge, where we were trying to encourage young people to vote for the Labour Party and get rid of Margaret Thatcher, and that in some ways stepped over the line from just singing about it. One of the great failings about The Clash, much as I loved them, was that they didn't actually engage in the political mainstream. A lot of their politics, eventually I realised, was posing. So Red Wedge was an attempt to actually carry on the spirit of the miners' strike in a way that bands were coming together for a political reason, and carry on that spirit into actually into opposition, democratic opposition to the policies of Margaret Thatcher. And that was a really interesting time to be making music. Unlike today, the entire country was ideologically divided. The Labour Party was clearly on the left of politics, and the Conservative Party were clearly on the right. And because the miners' strike had been going on for a year, politics was at the top of everyone's agenda. So it was possible in that atmosphere for an initiative like Red Wedge to be launched and to resonate with young people. I mean, you know, the sort of newspapers they were reading, magazines like the New Musical Express, which is still going but now is kind of like a glossy hello type magazine. Back in those days it had political figures on the front, and there was political discussion going on in the pages. So it was possible to use pop music and pop culture to engage in the debates of the day and to encourage young people to engage in those debates. Now, obviously, whether it's the fall of the Berlin Wall or the arrival of New Labour or whatever it was, we no longer live in such ideological times. And I think it's more difficult for young bands today to engage. It's you know, in my day it was much easier to get a grip on it, and also we were very close to the radical music and radical movements of the 1960s. We'd kind of been, you know, sort of school age when that was going on, so we saw how it was done. But young bands coming through today, although they're aware and many of them do really good stuff on single issue groups, issues like Make Poverty History, they don't really have that overall ideological, you might call it baggage, I'd rather say it was faculty to deal with broader subjects, which I've had. You know, I'm still working with the Labour Party, with the Liberal Democrats, with anybody really who's trying to make a better society. I'm not a Labour Party member. You know, having run two vote swapping campaigns down in South and West Dorset, I would have been expelled for the party, going around West Dorset telling people to vote Lib Dem. So I'm not a party member, but I do still work closely with people who I made connections with during the days of the miners' strike and with Red Wedge, and most notably within the union movement. So that's always given me a platform to talk about those kind of issues. And when the Labour government in 1997 decided to embark on a programme of constitutional reform, that was always an issue I felt very, very strongly about. I've been a founding signature of Charter 88. I believe in a written constitution. But more than that, I've always felt that an unelected House of Lords, of which you, Paul, are a member, was something that in the long run actually puts people off democracy. The idea of participation, the idea of engaging in politics, in democracy. The House of Lords, it seemed to me, because it is either was hereditary, now is wholly patronage, was actually a drag on democracy, and perhaps something that fed people's cynicism about politics. So in 97, when these debates began, I went along with the then chair of Charter 88, Pam Giddy, who later went on to chair the Power Commission, and she said, you know, you should come along and get involved in this. They were having, there was a Royal Commission, they were taking evidence from members of the public, so I put forward a few ideas and got involved in it. And since then I've tried to continue to be involved, not just in reform of the second chamber, but in general in constitutional reform that's aimed particularly at encouraging participation. Engagement with politics, as I say, that was the thing the Clash never did, and that was why they failed ultimately. My life has always been trying to find ways to engage with politics without actually taking the plunge and becoming a politician, because I think it should be open to broader people to make a point, and particularly because of the medium that I work in, there is access to a younger generation of people who perhaps still have their bright shining idealism, and I've tried to connect with them using music. Obviously, reform of the House of Lords is not the sort of thing you can write a crisp pop song about. It's a rather dry issue, but I have used what platforms I've got to try and put these ideas across. The bottom line to me with Lords reform is most importantly participation, a democratic second chamber, particularly one that was proportionally representative, would encourage people, I think, to participate in the democratic process more. But also I think a legitimate second chamber would help the whole political process work better. It would help the House of Commons to do its job better, which is to hold the executive to account. And one of the most, one of the biggest, I think, I suppose what you could say, nests of cynicism that have occurred in the past, really not just with New Labour, with Thatcher as well before, is the overpowerful executive, the overmighty executive. I don't think our democracy, two-chamber democracy, is functioning the way it should. There are a number of reasons for that, but one of the most important ones is the fact that the second chamber is not able to do its job properly because it doesn't have democratic teeth, and more importantly than that, people don't believe in it. I want people to believe that the second chamber belongs to them, not to the political parties, and that they feel vested in that second chamber so that when it does take on the government, when it does raise questions, it's representing people rather than the perception at the moment that the public have generally, which is I think they feel the second chamber represents vested interests, whether they're within political parties or within big business or within the landed gentry, because of the hereditary aspect of it. So I've been engaging as I can in that, writing pamphlets, stirring people up, appearing on platforms with people, and whilst I do, as I said before, I do believe in a written constitution and all the things that would come with a Bill of Rights and all those other things that would come with a fully reformed constitution. The reason I'm staying batting on this wicket of Lords reform is because of all those things that we long for. Many of them, I'm afraid, are over the horizon. Lords reform is actually before Parliament at the moment. It's an unbearably slow process, but it is actually still being considered by Parliament. That's where the fight is. We should be marching towards the sound of the gunfire. Once we've achieved the democratic second chamber, we then have a really good platform for a full Bill of Rights and a written constitution. But before we can play Chelsea in the cup final, we have to beat Aston Villa away on a muddy pitch on a Wednesday night, and that's where we are with Lords reform.